I'd like to call to order the City of Littleton City Council virtual regular meeting for Tuesday, August 4th, 2020. It is 6:30 or 18:30. City Clerk, roll call, please.
Mayor Valdez.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Malin.
Here.
Councilmember Driscoll.
Present.
Councilmember Elrod.
Here.
Councilmember Fay.
Here.
Councilmember Grove.
Here.
Councilmember Milliman.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Great, thank you, Colleen. And Sam Fox, Assistant to the City Manager, if you could tell us how this meeting will proceed.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, members of Council, staff, citizens, and guests. I'm Sam Fox, Assistant to the City Manager, and I'll be serving as the moderator for this evening's virtual council meeting. We are streaming this meeting on cable channel 8, Facebook, on our website, littletongov.org. Please be aware, comments left on Facebook Live will not be moderated and will not be included in the meeting minutes. Those wishing to participate in public comment are advised to view the meeting at littletongov.org under My Littleton and Littleton 8 TV, as this broadcast has the least amount of delay. The agenda will be handled by Mayor Valdez in the same way it would be handled for a regular in-person meeting. As always, citizen participation is encouraged during public comment and public hearings. To participate via phone, please call 669-900-6833. And when prompted, enter the webinar ID 998-5029-1794. There will be one opportunity for citizen participation this evening, public comments. If you wish to speak during this opportunity, please call in early and stay on the line. Again, the number is 669-900-6833. When prompted, enter the webinar ID 998-5029-1794. When public comment is announced, please press *9 to raise your hand and be recognized as speaker. Microphones will be muted for all citizens calling in. Citizens can press *9 to raise their hand and be recognized. Speakers will have 3 minutes to address council. The city clerk will announce when you have 30 seconds remaining, and again when your time is up. We expect all comments to be civil. Disrespectful or disruptive behavior will not be tolerated. For agenda items, Mayor Valdez will ask for a motion and a second, followed by discussion and a vote. Council will vote on agenda items using a thumbs up vote and for a yes and a thumbs down vote for a no. The clerk will call each vote with all ayes and nays. Again, if you plan on participating during public comment, please call 669-900-6833. When prompted, enter the webinar ID 998-5029-1794. Please stay on the line and press *9 to raise your hand to speak. Thank you, Mayor.
All right, thank you very much, Sema. All right, Council, moving down to approval of the agenda. Do we have any changes? Seeing none, the agenda is approved. And just a reminder to the Council that let's use the raise the hand icon again this week, see how that works. All right, we'll move down to comments and reports. We'll start with the City Manager. When we get to Council, we'll go in alphabetical order, but we'll start with the City Manager.
No report this evening, Mayor.
Oh, thank you. City Attorney.
No report, Mayor.
We'll start with Council Member Driscoll.
No report from me either.
Hey, Council Member Elrod.
One little comment. So today on Tri-County Health Department call, they did make everyone aware that they're looking to open up another testing site that not going to require some of those pre-qualifications, so that more testing is available even for those not experiencing symptoms. So that is going to be in Aurora to serve essentially Arapahoe County. So I just wanted to make that known that that is going to be coming in the near future.
Great, thank you very much. Council Member Fay.
No report.
Council Member Grove.
I just want to say a big thank you to all the citizens and people in the community that gave us input on the ULUC form. and looking at the future for their city. It took time, it was detailed, and it'll be great to hear what staff comes up with in the summary they provide. The other thing I wanted to talk about is the Next Gen Committee. They've been meeting over the last couple months, working on a sustainability document that's framed around the Phase 2 code, and also giving feedback on the ULUC code. And that will be sent to staff tomorrow. They're also meeting for their regular August meeting, and this will be the first meeting of all the new members. So now the committee is full. There'll be 15 people, which is very exciting. So in addition to putting the ULUC on a little bit on the back burner, they're going to continue on with their sustainability subcommittee. And now they're going to focus on the one that is about diversity, equality, inclusion, and belongingness. So that one will kick up. If there's any other topics that are timely that they should discuss in their meetings or in their subcommittee meetings, please let me know and I will forward it on to them at their meeting. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Councilmember Milliman.
Just a quick comment to echo Pam's gratitude to everybody that in submitting their comments at the end of the month. It is very important for our city going forward, and we're very grateful to hear from everybody. And also, I'll just plug again, if you haven't completed yours, please do that. It's very, very important for city, especially if we go over the 50,000 mark, which I suspect that we will. And yay on an extra testing site in Aurora. That'll maybe take some pressure off of the testing site at Children's. And for that, I'm eternally grateful now. Thanks. Hope everybody's wearing their mask.
All right, thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Malin.
No report.
All right, thank you. And I have no report. Just remind the council, though, our next meeting will be next Tuesday, and that is August 11th. All righty. Thank you. We have no citizens appearance scheduled tonight, but we do have public appearance. Or public comments, I'm sorry. So I will go ahead and open up the public comment. It is, looks like it is 6:38. And Sama, if you could please tell us how the audience can participate.
Thank you. If you wish to address the City Council under public comment, please call 669-900-6833. And when prompted, enter the webinar ID 998-5029-1794. Press star 9 to be recognized. Citizen microphones will be automatically muted until a citizen is called upon to speak by the last 3 digits of their phone number. Please state your name and district or address clearly for the record. A reminder, the city clerk will notify you when you have 30 seconds remaining, and again when your time is up. Public comment is an opportunity to express opinions or ask questions regarding issues that are not part of the hearings on tonight's agenda. Each speaker will be limited to 3 minutes. The city clerk will notify you when you have 30 seconds remaining, and again when your time is up. The City Council is not authorized by the Colorado Open Meetings Law to discuss, comment, or take action at the meeting on any issue raised by public comment that is not part of tonight's agenda. The mayor may refer the matter to the city manager and/or city attorney for immediate comment after public comment, or to staff to obtain additional information and report back to council as appropriate. We expect comments to be civil. Disrespectful or disruptive behavior will not be tolerated. Mayor, we currently have 1 hand raised. We do have some other participants in the queue, so I'll just remind you to press star 9 if you would like to be recognized for public comment. Caller 819, you have been unmuted. Caller 819, you may begin speaking.
Hi, City Council. My name is Pam Chadbourne. I live a block and a half from the City Center in District 1. I wanted to express my disappointment and, in fact, lack of any faith or confidence in the Phase 2 code amendments that were proposed. This is unfortunate, and I am happy about it. I want to talk a little bit about why. And that's because protections that help Littleton remain Littleton must be in place before these Phase 2 code amendments as proposed are passed. If these are passed, you cannot catch up with these protections later. These give entitlements to property purchasers who, by the way, have been very silent for the past year or so, just waiting for this to pass, I think. You can't impose these later because any purchases made under this are going to have entitlements that are radical. I don't understand why we don't see that more clearly, but anyway, let me say, if this is passed the way it is, even partially, the promises made and the compliance with the Envision 5 key goals and the comp plan will be violated, and Littleton downtown will not preserve its character. It will not preserve its historic assets. Within 20 years, it will not be recognizable. It will also be weaker because it won't have the strength of the historic district. And I'll just say, development is financed differently now. There are not 30-year mortgages. They're in and out within kind of 8-10 years. The problems in 2007-8 have not been fixed. They'll sell derivatives to get out. And the city and you, City Council, are the only people who look out for Littleton's long-term interests. I'm going to say to City Council that hundreds, if not thousands of people have worked for decades, maybe up to 100 years, to build what you have inherited. The Phase 2 code changes will wipe that out. And so you have a strong responsibility here, and I want you to be aware of it. So the protections that need to be in place include requirements for energy efficient buildings, which will be required within 20 years to control climate change. I noticed that the agenda for the study session includes historic preservation, and if you wait for the ULUC, again, that's pointless.
30 seconds.
You can't pass this the way it is and try to preserve history later. It will be impossible. You need to have affordable housing requirements, and they must be specific and required. There must be model lighting ordinances to cut down on the amount of light intrusion and trespass. When you make people live closer together, you need to get rid of nuisances. And new construction has to pay impact fees or contribute to
Your time's
some
up,
fund to get these done. So I appreciate this. I guess I'll write you more about it. It's very important.
Thank you, Pam.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Sama, do we have any other callers?
Thank you. Caller 443, you are next. Caller 443, you have been unmuted.
Go ahead, caller.
Caller 443, thank you.
There we go.
Yes, here I am. My name is Robin Bernstein. I'm over at Geneva Village, and I just wanted to say I agree completely with Pam Chadbourne. She really knows her stuff, but I agree with everything she's saying. That's all.
Right. Thank you very much, Robin. Sama, do we have another caller?
Thank you, Mayor. We have one other caller, and I'd just like to remind people in our queue, go ahead and press *9 if you'd like to be recognized for comment. Just going to give people a minute to catch up if you don't mind here. All right, we have one final caller. Caller is at 079. Caller 079, you have been unmuted and may begin speaking.
Hi, my name is Maureen Shannon. I live in District 2. I run the organization North Littleton Promise, and we've been always been so thankful for the partnership that we've had with the city. I'm calling because I feel like sometimes a voice that is left out of these conversations is the voice of lower income families, the vulnerable that live in our community and that really enhance and make our community, make Littleton what it is. I happen to have relationships with a lot of these folks, but what I'm struggling to see in the proposal for downtown Littleton is the plan to make up for 6,500 housing units that the housing study identified in 2017. And I don't see long range thinking in terms of a plan to put 6,500 new housing units into this proposed code. I'm not seeing it in downtown Littleton. And I think we have to look at every single phase or every single area as we're rewriting this code. And I don't see the plan. I don't see the foresight right now. And I feel like there's a lot of people that are going to be lost in this. And I understand the value for preserving historic Littleton, but at what cost? At what cost? When we're not pro affordable housing, when we're not thinking about our elderly, when we're not thinking about even our adult children. I have a 22-year-old who could never afford to live in Littleton at this point in her life. And I feel like we're doing a disservice, and we're going against what Envision Littleton has stated as priorities and values in terms of inclusivity. I don't think that we are fully thinking about all of our members of our community and thinking out about what that looks like over the next 20 years. I'd love to see some initiative by the council to address this housing issue as it relates to both downtown Littleton and the rest of Littleton as we go through these phases. Thank you for your time.
All right, thank you very much, Maureen. Sam, do we have any others?
Thank you, Mayor. No other callers.
All righty, it is now 6:46, and I will close the public hearing. Do we have anything from the city manager or city attorney that they'd like to add?
Maybe just a couple of comments, Mayor and Council. I think the opportunity here at the end of August, when staff brings back the phase 2 draft for council and planning commission consideration, I think it'll be important to remind all of us, including our citizens, of the process that we've been through for the last 3 years. So we have gone through a visioning process. We have gone through a comprehensive planning process. And within that, there are a series of goals. The challenge, of course, is we can't do it all at once. And so there is a sequence to what has been laid out here. And I think we do recognize that affordable housing is a challenge. It's certainly reflected in the comprehensive plan. I think one of the key issues that has been identified in the work that is now before the council and the planning commission and in the ULUC is the protection of our community character. And the approach that we are taking is extremely unique. It is not the conventional approach that you would see across cities across the country. It is not the, as they say, Euclidean style. And so we are looking at something very different and very unique for us. And I think that's why we selected this particular firm. So I am confident that in the end, we are going to have something that is much more protective of our community and meets much more of the intent in the long run for not just community character, but the recognition that we have historic preservation, we have affordable housing, we have a whole host of issues that we need to address over time. So again, I think we'll take the opportunity at the end of this month when we present that document to review the sequencing and the timing of some of these plans. So thank you.
Great, thank you. City Attorney, anything?
Nothing to add, Mayor. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. All right, we will move down to our agenda item number 6, the consent agenda items. Sama, if you will, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Consent agenda items may be adopted by a simple motion. All ordinances must be read by title prior to a vote on the motion. Any consent agenda item may be removed at the request of a council member.
Great, thank you very much. And council, we have 2 items on our agenda. The first item is 6A, Ordinance 27-2020, an ordinance on first reading amending the floodplain regulations contained in Title 10, Chapter 6 to prohibit certain tents and makeshift structures in the floodplain and requiring freeboard for supporting utilities and manufactured homes in the floodplain. Item 6B, ID number 20-195, approval of the July 21, 2020 virtual regular meeting minutes. Council, do I have a motion?
Chair, I'll go ahead and make a motion. I motion to approve ordinance 27-2020 and also to approve ID number 20-195, approval of the July 21st minutes.
Can I quickly?
Okay, we're looking for a second.
Sorry, Jerry, I need to pull 27.
We have to have a second before we do discussion.
Oh, okay.
A second.
No, Mayor, I think she wants.
Okay, Councilmember Milliman, just second. Okay, Councilmember Elrod.
It wasn't a discussion. I just wanted a definition of what freeboard meant. I wanted to pull it so I could ask that question.
Yeah, let's go to our city attorney on that.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch the question.
The question is, what is freeboarding?
Freeboarding?
Which is in the
Public Works question, I'm sure.
Yes.
Carolyn?
Yeah, can you all hear me okay? This is Carolyn Roan.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, freeboard is defined as being an elevational distance between the water surface elevation associated with the floodplain and a key pertinent elevation of a structure, usually the lowest floor elevation, or in this case, the elevation of the electrical supporting systems for a structure, such as a manufactured home.
Great. All right. Thank you very much.
Or
all right,
skateboarding downhill.
Okay. We'll just mute that mic there if we can. Thank you. All right. Council, we have a motion and a second. So an approval is a thumbs up, and an oppose is a thumbs down. So vote.
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion carries unanimously.
Great. Thank you, Council. We'll move on down to item number 7, general business. And we have 2 items. Our first item is ID number 20-180, 2019 Audit Report and Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, also known as our CAFR. So we're going to have a presentation in this. I'll turn it over to City Manager. And you're not looking for any direction on this particular item. We just have a presentation. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right. Thank you. City Manager.
So good evening, Council, Mayor, thank you. Once a year, we come before the Council and our auditor. They present their findings. And in my opinion, perhaps one of the most important responsibilities of a city council is to making sure that our budget and accounting practices meet applicable standards. And we take this obviously pretty seriously. And I would, at this point, probably hand it off to Tiffany Hooton, our finance director, and Tiffany can make a few introductions and we can review the CAFR.
And if I may interject, Mark, you and I talked about this yesterday, that while this seems like it's just an easy thing, we're kind of just going with it, rubber stamping. It wasn't all that long ago when our financial reports were not this favorable. Tiff's predecessor, Doug Farmer, he got things in line for the city, did a really great job doing that. And now Tiffany has kept that effort going with her staff. So thank you very much. So again, this is something that is important, as the city manager said. So thank you very much. Tiffany?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I appreciate that. There are 2 documents that the city produces annually, the CAFR, which is the financial report, and the budget. And both of them are equally important. I think the audit sometimes gets overlooked or not necessarily undervalued, but it certainly takes a lot of work to complete the CAFR and get that audit report from the auditors. You know, it's a group effort. I want to thank all of our staff in finance and frankly, all of the staff at the city. Everyone has a hand in it in one way or another. And so it's very important that we all work together and make sure that we get to that end point, which is to get an audit report, an unmodified audit report from the auditors. 2019 audit and the CAFR posed some challenges. Probably, as you all know, the COVID required us to do it 100% remote starting in March. Typically, our auditors come in April and May and do on-site field work. And that way they can talk with all of the staff and ask questions and get things answered promptly. And so this year, we definitely had to work with our auditors, and they were so welcoming and letting us adjust some of our practices and ways that we get data to them so that we could continue with the audit. I kid Arlene because I really was thinking we might have to postpone it a little bit, but Arlene really pushed us and pushed our staff to keep dredging along and make sure that we met that deadline. So I do appreciate Arlene and all of the staff there. I am happy to share the CAFR and the audit report with council. It's a long time coming. It's very important to the city. If we were to issue debt, they would absolutely look at our financial statements to understand where the city is financially, and also our budget document. So it is very important, and we're happy to present this to you this evening. We do have Paul Niedermuller with Clifton Larson Allen, who is our auditor, and this is our second year with Clifton Larson Allen, and they have been wonderful, great, very accommodating, and it's really been a pleasure to work with them over the last couple of years. We have a 5-year contract, so we're with them for 3 more years as long as they'll continue to have us. And so I think with that, I will go ahead and hand it over to Paul, and he's going to report on the 2019 CAFR and the audit.
Well, thank you, Tiffany, and thank you, Arlene, for the overview of the audit process. And good evening, Honorable Mayor and members of the City Council. Again, my name is Paul Niedermuller, Principal with Clifton Larson Allen, and I'm happy to be in front of you virtually tonight to go over the comprehensive annual financial report, as well as the results of our work over the financial statement audit. I will correct a little bit with Tiffany. We did have a first start in November. We were able to get out on site. It seems like such a long time ago, pre-pandemic, but the majority of the work was done remotely, and we had many Zoom calls and Teams meetings to kind of walking through information as they provided in order to meet our objective as we come here tonight. There are a couple items within your packet that I'm going to briefly discuss, and I'm going to leave some time to address any of your questions. And I want to make it clear we work very closely with management, but we work for City Council at your direction. So we appreciate this opportunity to come before you tonight and discuss the results of the audit. As Tiffany stated, we did issue an unmodified opinion in all material respects, which is a clean opinion, keeping in mind that management in their role, and as Tiffany describes, prepares these financial statements. And our responsibility is to issue the audit report over the financial statements. You will see within your financial statement document that there are, especially on page 10, that the Littleton Inglewood wastewater treatment plant was not audited by Clifton Larson Allen. That was audited by another auditor, which we're relying on their report. As we moved along to page 11 of the comprehensive annual financial report, that is where we describe our unmodified opinion. And so again, congratulations to council and management for receiving that for the year ended December 31, 2019. In your packet is also a document called Governance Communications. We liken this to a Cliff Note version of what transpired in the audit. You can come to the end of the engagement and say, hey, everything was clean, but how did you get there? And was there anything that you need to know from your role as governance within the city of Littleton? In this document, we outline various changes that would have happened. If changes happen from your accounting policies, so if management change accounting policies, if they change the way they estimate certain activities, we would be required to outline those and describe those. On the first page, we do not have any changes surrounding the way that you accounted for things as compared to the previous year. On the second page, I think most importantly for council is any difficulties encountered during performing the audit. We have already described the difficulty of not being in person, but doing everything through a Zoom type setting. But again, there was nothing that was out of the ordinary in terms of the circumstances that we were dealing with during the pandemic. Disagreements would be another area of concern if we had those, and we're happy to report as performing our work, we did not have any disagreements with management in terms of any financial accounting, reporting, or auditing manner as we performed the work over your financial statements. Management is also given a management representation letter, and this is at the conclusion of the audit. That's within your packet. And this basically outlines all of the information they provided to us. They had nothing else that they're aware of that would need to be considered as part of preparing the financial statements. And so that is highlighted within your financial statement or your agenda packet tonight. So nothing, again, out of the ordinary surrounding those types of reports, as well as our role as your independent auditor. And then finally, the culmination, it comes down to if there's any items that we believe are necessary to report to council from an internal control standpoint. That letter is within your packet called IC Control and Yellow Book. And as you read through that report, we note no findings or recommendations as a result of performing your audit. Again, a very high marks surrounding your role over governance, as well as management's responsibilities over financial statement and internal control. The last comment that I'd like before I open it up for any questions is, as you have moved through a risk and a remote, I just want to remind council of the importance of being vigilant in terms of your control structure and making sure that you don't let your guard down and it can adapt to the change in the economics and the remote versus in person. And that is one of the things that we have seen within the governmental landscape and other private business landscape is the change and being adaptable to make sure you're protecting the interest of your financial assets that you've accumulated. So I just want to remind council of the importance of continuing to evaluate those internal controls and management's responsibility to make sure you're being good stewards of those funds. Finally, I'd like to thank Tiffany and Erlene for the professionalism displayed throughout the audit process. We know this is quite a disruption, and we appreciate all of the work that you have done to get us to this process. At this time, I stand for any questions that you have as members of City Council. I guess I'm sitting, but.
All right, well, thank you. And council, the CAFR was put into your mailboxes this week. So thank you very much for having those. Also, there's the business survey and the resident survey. Council, let's go for questions. I gotta get over here. All right, do we have any questions, council?
Mayor, I would also like to add that we did email a copy of the CAFR, and it is also available on the website if anyone would like to
excellent
source that.
Excellent. This kind of lovely document, it's great to have it on your lap as you read it. All right. Council, remember to use your icon if you can. I think, Karina, I think you do have a question. Go ahead.
I just have a comment. I too want to reiterate the effort and appreciation to Tiffany, her staff, on what it takes to put this together. For those of you that do, I also do encourage you to read it. It's almost an easier way to understand our budget. It puts it into categories and groups it just a little bit different. So it is a really great document, obviously a big document, but do encourage everyone to keep it on their lap, as Jerry said. Comments from citizens actually asking, they citizens have looked at the CAFR, so good work, Tiffany. I think it's a great representation of the quality of our financials and the transparency that we provide to our community.
Great, thank you, Council Member Milliman. If you could unmute yourself.
Thank you. I just want to reiterate I agree with Karina's comments. So much thanks to Tiffany and her team for all the hard work, especially during such a crazy last couple of months or so. So keep it up. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Great. I see no other hands raised. Well, Paul, thank you very much for making yourself available tonight. And Mark, your staff did an incredible job once again. So thank you. Council, do we have no action to take on this? Do we have any other questions on this? If not, Mark, do you have anything you want to close?
Well, I think, again, I just want to thank council certainly. And I think the discussions we've had in the last few years, some of our financial planning, 5-year capital plans and the like, I think we've been moving our city, I believe, in a very positive direction. Priority-based budgeting, all of those issues. The real nuts and bolts, though, that the CAFR identifies is probably one of the most important things, again, that any city, any council can look at. And so I am very proud of our staff. And a very special thanks to Erlene, because this will be her last CAFR with the city of Littleton. As you know, Erlene has decided to take a prolonged vacation and look for other opportunities in other places. So we will miss Erlene. I wish her the best. She's not quite gone yet, but this definitely will be her last CAFR.
All right. Well, thank you, Arlene. Thank you very much. All
Absolutely.
right. Great.
Thank you,
Well, if we
Councilman.
have nothing else, I'm going to move on to our next item. So under general business 7B, approval of the CARES Act Business Recovery Grant and Nonprofit Assistance Grant Program. And I will turn it over once again to the city manager.
All right. Thank you, Mayor. So council, this evening here, we have presenting to council here two motions. The first one will be the Business Recovery Grant, and the second one is going to be the Nonprofit Assistance Grant. And so with that, I'm going to be asking Tiffany Hooten here to go ahead and make a presentation with this. We did have a discussion here with council at a study session a week ago. We have made some changes as a result of that. And so we do want to walk through council some of those changes. So,
and I do want to point out to council that we have some discussion later, but there will be some decisions that we need to make for direction.
That's correct. We're looking for very specific direction here and a motion.
Okay, thank you, Mark. I am going to see if I can multitask and share my screen using two different methods here. All right, this evening we're going to be talking about the CARES Act and the Business Recovery Grant and the Nonprofit Assistance Grant programs. And this is out of discussions that we had on July 28th related to CARES Act funds. We're also going to provide you with some recommended motions that we would like council to take some action on at the end of our presentation and discussion. I think with this, Denise, if I can maybe hand it over to you and you can talk about some of the changes that we made to the Business Recovery Grant Program since July 28th.
Yes, thank you, Tiffany. Well, we took into account some of your concerns and observations, and so we made some of the following changes. Now, regarding the Business Recovery Grant, we reduced the demonstrated economic injury from 25 to 10%. And then we also added the infrastructure improvements to comply with public health orders. Then there was some interest in not duplicating grant funds. So we added Arapahoe County and Littleton Business Recovery grants to the process. Applicants must tell us if they've received grants from the county or from Littleton in the past so that we won't duplicate those amounts. Those are the things that we changed that we thought you were most concerned with. And Tiffany, I think we could move toward the next slide if you're ready.
Sure. This one is the Nonprofit Assistance Grants. And again, there were some revisions made since our discussion on July 28th.
Yes, there was some concern about using criteria of first come, first serve. So we did remove that from the criteria. And then there was also an observation that we put down charitable organizations and prohibited churches or religious institutions from applying. But we recognize that some churches do have mission outreach or programs that are not tied to the church directly, but rather are available to the larger community. So we added some language that reads charitable organizations and or charitable programs, which would allow for those programs that churches provide that are not tied directly to the church. Also, there was some concern about allowing business organizations to apply, but we stated that only those that do not make political contributions could be eligible. So those are the basic changes.
Okay, so with those two programs, originally we had requested $375,000 for the business grant portion and then $200,000 for the nonprofit portion. And just as a kind of a reminder, the city has allocated $4.4 million in CARES Act. Phase 1 included $1.182 million, and then phase 2 is $1.52 million. So moving forward with these two programs, we will still have about $1.7 million of CARES Act funds available to address any future needs. And I will just remind you that we do have a study session scheduled on August 18th to bring forward some phase 3 potential projects of CARES Act money, and then also discussing the council chamber renovation related to COVID issues. So I think with that, the recommended motions that we have is to approve the Business Recovery Grant Program with the changes that have been made since July 28th in an amount not to exceed $375,000. And then a second motion to fund the Nonprofit Assistance Grant Program in an amount not to exceed $200,000. And again, including the changes that have been made since July 28th. And with that, if anyone has any questions or discussion, we'd be happy to answer.
Okay, well, we will start. We have somebody with their hand raised, but I don't know who it is.
It could be me.
Oh, maybe it is. Oh, it is, Mark. It is you. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
One of the things I would like Denise Stevens to kind of touch on a little bit here is the discussion we had a week ago where the council had raised some interest in looking at how we might take the business grants and not look at first come, first serve, and somehow use review or criteria as part of the application to somehow kind of filter and prioritize that. So I'd like Denise to kind of talk about that because there is a rather extensive process, and that would be our hope, is to use that criteria for exactly that purpose. So Denise, do you mind just touching on that a little bit?
Not at all. One of the things that we learned by doing the other phases of this grant was kind of checks and balances that help make this sort of an even playing field. So I'd like to start with outreach, because outreach regarding these funds is really significant because we want everyone in the community that is a potential applicant to know about them. So what we do is we send out a notice, which is emailed, and it's posted before opening the application process, and it indicates to save the date, and that will be the date when the application opens. Then a reminder will be emailed and posted with links to the application on the day the process opens. Information and the application links are posted on the City of Littleton and Go to Littleton websites, and notice will be provided to Hoodlum and to the Littleton Business Chamber, and they both help us post this as well. Additionally, the Communications Department puts out a press release and includes information about the grants in the social media posts. And then applicants, once they have submitted an application, will receive an immediate email notification that they have successfully submitted that application. Applications will be reviewed in the order they are received, and final decisions will be made following the date the application process closes. So just to touch a little bit on the actual review process, we set specific dates for review of those applications. The committee includes 5 people that review those applications. We, as a committee, review the applications as they come in, and we note preliminary approval or denial. And once the application closes, and that's to be determined, we'll review the remaining applicants and make final decisions. If the applications submitted exceed available funds and all other eligibility requirements are met, applicants will be awarded in the order their application was received. So all else being equal, If one was submitted an hour or two or a day before the next, then that one submitted earlier would receive funds. Part of what we do when we're reviewing applications is that we check to make sure that those self-certified eligibility requirements are met. We check someone who submitted prior, then that applicant might take priority.
So that's not first come, first serve. There is another layer then.
There is, absolutely. But what I'm saying is that if we get to the end of the process and there are 2 applicants or 4 applicants where they all meet those standards and there's nothing to differentiate other than when those applications were received, we would probably default to that who had submitted at an earlier day and time.
So all things being equal, which is probably not the case.
Probably unlikely.
Right. I mean, I've gone through this process in terms of allocating grant funds, and we always have a small pot of funds and many more people, and we're trying to, juggle this all, and we have a certain set of criteria that we have to use. And it seems like everybody that comes in has to meet the criteria or they don't get accepted for whatever reason. And then back to my point, and I don't need to belabor it because I may be in the minority here. I think we were looking at giving it to the one with the greater need or the greater return on the city's investment. That's what I thought I was hearing.
And I totally understand that, and I agree with that. And so that would be in the narrative of what that applicant presents. And we would absolutely consider those in greater need, also those that are more sustainable and so forth.
Okay, we have a couple of hands raised, and again, I can't read all the names. I don't know why. Look, let me just see if I spread it out a little bit better. Yeah, there we go. So we have Mayor Pro Tem.
It sounds to me like first come, first served, which, as we all know, has pros and cons. Right? The pro is that sort of inherently inequitable way to make this decision, and the con is that it maybe doesn't reflect exactly the policy priorities of the council. I think that if council wants to have that discussion about making it not first come, first serve, but basing it on some set of additional criteria, we probably need to table this, because I do not think that we can get to that point tonight. I think that staff would have to go think pretty hard through what some of those criteria would be for allocating the funding to prompt a conversation. I think if we try to craft that program through a discussion tonight, that we are going to miss the mark pretty widely and work some pretty unintended consequences. So,
Okay. All right. Thank you, Council Member Milliman.
Denise, for putting this together, and I don't agree with us playing. I don't want to say favorites, but us looking at the applications and going, "Wow, this one might look better than that one." I think we just keep it simple. I think you've laid out the criteria in terms that the applicants can understand, and you just keep it this first come, first serve. My question is, there's a phase 3 business grant program coming. Is that what I understand? And if so, when might that be available or put into place?
This is actually phase 3. We did phases 1 and phase 2 before we had the CARES Act money. So this is phase 3 with the CARES Act funding.
Good. Anything else, Kelly?
Yeah, sorry about that. I put myself on mute. Maybe the question is then, with that $1.7 million left over to address future needs, I don't know if some of that funding might be used for a future business grant program or not. Is that a possibility? It is. Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. We'll go to Council Member Driscoll, then Elrod, then Valdez.
Thanks, Jerry. I think Denise did a very good job of explaining that if all things are equal, we would have to go on first come, first basis. My perception would be all things will not be equal. I think I would be very surprised if we have two companies, businesses that are in the exact same position. And I think we need to move forward on this as we agreed last week. And as Denise said, if everything is all equal, which I don't think it will be, then you need that ultimate decider. So that's my opinion, is to move forward on this.
Great. Thank you. Council Member Elrod, then Valdez, then Millen.
For some of that explanation, and I do agree with Patrick. I do think we should move forward, and I think at the end of the day, both the business grant program and the nonprofit grant program is a solid and important program that I think we have to offer to our community. I will agree with Pam that this, the eligibility is still the eligibility. And I don't know that there's, so let me take a step back. When I read the staff memo, it states, staff does recommend allowing staff some flexibility in setting the process detailed to achieve the goals of council. This includes improved processes with business grants to confirm the application best meets the criteria established by the program, not simply first come, first serve. And so to me, when I actually read the memo, it appeared to me to indicate that there would be a form of evaluation that defines best meets. And I don't necessarily need to know those details. But I was under the impression that you were bringing this forward as there is, while one person may meet an eligibility, both companies may meet all of the eligibility requirements you lay out here, but to what degree would one meet it better or another? I just want to really ensure that prioritization is not based on a timestamp, because that's still what it sounds like to me, that eligibility is, can you check all these boxes that you've laid out, which is fair, right? But then I don't know, subjectivity is a good thing when based on our council goals and our comprehensive plan. It's not subjectivity of Denise versus another person. So I'm okay with what I think I'm understanding from the staff recommendation to allow you guys to work through some of that. I just really do not want it to be prioritization, then at the end is a timestamp.
If I may add one thing that may help clarify this, there is quite a bit of narrative that's provided through the application process. And that narrative really helps us decide what is the actual need. It's surprisingly revealing. And I think I've probably created some confusion about the first come, first serve, because with the phase 1 and phase 2, we opened it one day and closed it the next. We had very finite amount of funds. So we went through all of those applications the minute it closed and started to approve or disapprove. And then when we got to the end of that funding, that was the end of it. So we did do first come, first serve. This one is going to have a longer period of time where it's open. There's quite a bit of narrative that they can provide. And just like you guys say, it's highly unlikely that all things will be equal. We just wanted to state that in the off chance that that did occur.
Great. All right. Thank you. I'm sorry, Corinne. Go ahead.
Second, but I'll hold it until next round.
Okay, great. City Manager, did you have something you wanted to say at this point?
Yeah, I think I just wanted to add to this here. I think the intent is just as Councilmember Elrod described in the staff communication. The one example I guess I would suggest that may be easier to identify to is when we are asking the threshold of 10% loss due to COVID that's the minimum threshold. And so one of the evaluation criteria is that if somebody has a much higher percentage of loss, then obviously we're going to give more credit to an application that is around something like that. So again, we're asking council a little bit of flexibility as we try to work through this thing, trying to meet your intent. But in the case of a tiebreaker, we needed something, and that was kind of the thought.
All right, thank you. I'm up next, and then it'll be Mayor Pro Tem. I'm good at the process. I think delaying it will not change the process by much. I think we need to get the money out there to these businesses. I like what you're doing here. I realize there is going to be some objective decisions in here, but you do need a tiebreaker, and that would be a tie stamp if that were the unlikely case that were to happen. So I'm good with the process as you have it now. We'll go to Mayor Pro Tem and then Councilmember Fay.
Yeah, I'm likewise satisfied with the process, and I was going to actually move to approve this. But if Karina has another question, or if Carol wants to chime in, I'll hold off.
All right, Councilmember Fay.
I would like to add in that while we are very busy giving money to businesses that haven't done well, there are many businesses who have done exceedingly well. They've been creative. They've worked really hard. They were brave in finding ways to stay in business and thrive even when everything changed. So I want to keep the impression from being that all businesses have been struggling. Not all have. And yay for those who pulled together to come out on top.
Good. All right, thank you. You faded away on us, so I'm thinking you're finished there. I have no other hands raised. If we could, Council, could we go ahead and let's go for a motion, and we're going to take it. It'll be two different motions here. One will be just for the business recovery grant. Second motion, after we vote on the first motion, will be the nonprofit assistance grant. So if you could, let's get a motion out for the business recovery grant. Main motion.
I have a second question. Can you hear me?
Sure, go ahead. Your hand's not up. That's why I didn't call you.
I can't figure out how to do that. I'm sorry.
It's at the bottom of your screen, probably. Sometimes you do it.
I know. I did it before. And now oh, here it is. Sorry. There I am.
There you are. Councilmember Elrod.
So thank you, Carol. I appreciate that because thank you. I know that was an example to say if one is in greater than in need of another, that would maybe be weighted more towards that with a greater need, but that's almost punishing those that have been innovative, et cetera. So again, while I leave it to the flexibility of the staff, please think through Carol's comments. I think it was completely valid, and I am in agreement with that. The other just comment that I want to make is there is Reed just shared with us. There's another CARES money that's going to businesses. And there's probably more coming from the federal government as well, which is not going to go to municipalities, but just asking that our language on the application allows some flexibility or room to kind of capture any kind of other grant that you have gotten that we may not have specified, as these things change on a daily or weekly basis. So just wanted to make sure we have that out clause, I guess, for us, if other grants that we may not have specified have been granted.
And to your point, Karina, the application itself breaks each one of these grant funds down. So there's the federal funding, there's the county, there's Littleton Business Grant Recovery Funds, and then there's other. And they certify that all that information they provide us is true. So a lot of people have submitted information in the previous grant programs as to other programs where they've received money.
Great. Let's get a motion on the table there, Council. If somebody could make a motion, please. Councilmember Elrod.
I move to approve the funding of Phase 3 Business Recovery Grant Program in the amount not to exceed $375,000 from CARES Act funds.
Second.
All right. Councilmember Driscoll was a second. Council, do we have any more discussion on this? I don't see any hands raised. So a thumbs up will be in favor. Thumbs down will be opposed. So council, if we could please vote.
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion carries unanimously.
Great. Thank you very much. Okay, council, we'll move on now to the nonprofit assistance grant. And it's my understanding we could end up with an amendment on this. Let's go ahead and get a main motion on the table for the nonprofit assistance grant, and then we'll go do our discussions. So can we get a motion, please?
Mayor,
Councilmember Milliman raised her hand.
I move to approve the funding of nonprofit assistance grant program in the amount not to exceed $200,000 from the CARES Act funds.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Councilmember Driscoll is a second. Okay, council, thank you very much. Discussion. Let me start this discussion then. I appreciate that you did work in there the charitable organizations, which includes churches, because I think that's very important. They do a lot of stuff for our community. It benefits our citizens as well as others. So thanks for getting that in. We have hands up. We have Councilmember Grove and then Faye. Councilmember Grove, please.
You're muted, Pam.
You're muted. There we go.
I overall am in favor of the motion, and I think we increased it from 100 to 200,000. Where I'm thinking is that breakdown. We've given hundreds of thousands of dollars to businesses, and that's great, and we want to support them. But I think we need to give more to individuals, and I would like to see the percentage based on what we saw in the study session, not what we're seeing tonight. It's not in the slides. Go more to the charitable organizations and programs for individuals than to the arts. And I am throwing out at least 150,000 instead of only 91,000 to the individuals and charitable organizations, and then the remaining 50,000 to be split among the art programs. So that's why I would like to advocate, and when appropriate would put a amendment based on the discussion and input from council.
Okay, good. We have Councilmember Faye.
I'd like to add on to that. That there is such a huge difference between helping people survive this time. And that's the nonprofit part. When you think about, there are people, and it will probably be increasing with the decrease of federal assistance, who are not going to have housing, are not going to have food, are not going to know what to do with their lives. And they are going to be completely dependent upon nonprofits. We as a city are completely dependent upon the nonprofits to serve them and keep them from ending up in personal disasters. Arts are important, but arts are discretionary, and arts benefit those who have the time and resources and money to be secure already in a time like this. It seems really selfish to me to put money into providing entertainment or psychologically well-being for people who really are in a comfortable position, rather than serving people who are having their whole life pulled out from under them because of this virus.
Great, thank you. All right, we have Councilmember Elrod.
Gary. So I think, I'll leave it to city manager to just, to address the percentage, because I think that maybe was misrepresented in the prior study session. And as far as the arts, nonprofits, what we're really doing here with both grants, both the business grant and the nonprofit grant, is a definition based on entity. And where many cultural industries fall is in the nonprofit sector. But many cultural industries, like for-profit businesses, are creating jobs and maintaining jobs. And that is what they're trying, that's what, by default, that's where they fall in our current grant program, because they can't fall within the business grant program because of that legal definition. And so we, to look at this is just a privilege. It is not that at all. So this is creating employment. It's ensuring that people can still work in the arts and not have to go to social services for other types of funds, et cetera. So it is an employment opportunity. It's an economic driver for our other businesses. And as I've also stated before, and Councilmember Milliman stated, it is a health and well-being. And so it really is fulfilling the requirements and desires that we're trying to get from the business grants and who we're supporting there, as well as some of these other outreach programs. We also have to recognize many of these cultural organizations are in fact doing programming for our youth, for our elders, and that is helping our community stay well, and well physically and well mentally, which is incredibly so important right now. So I think this is being misrepresented, potentially has been misrepresented as far as the percentage, because again, some of these cultural industries, one can, if you look at some of our shops in downtown Littleton, they're providing art, they're part of the creative industries, and they are in the for-profit sector, and there's some that are in the nonprofit. So it's just an industry that kind of falls somewhere in the middle, and that's why they're here from a legal, practical sense. They're here because that's what their legal definition.
Understood. I'm going to ask the city manager, or perhaps maybe even the finance director, looking at the report, how much do we have going scheduled, at least that we're proposing, for the arts and culture, and then how much the balance is going toward other nonprofits? Do you have that number in front of you?
Well, let me respond to that, and then maybe we could ask Tiffany Hooten here just to see if she's got any more detail. So I think what the staff presented at a previous study session on this were the possibilities that could happen within the 200,000. And so we were showing you the potential for some arts and culture that at least staff identified were possible. So we don't really know yet whether or not we can move them forward, but it's likely in some form. In fact, I think the staff communication acknowledges that in the case of arts and culture, it may be staff that has to initiate some of that action in order to kind of move things along. One exception, quite honestly, is the Town Hall Arts Center. We do know that they have reviewed the CARES Act and have submitted some preliminary information to Tiffany. And so I know she can respond to that at some level. The same can be said here for the nonprofits. So Love Inc. has done a lot of work in particular here on what could be possible. But again, we don't know the kind of the financial implications of what could be applied for. So it's my suggestion here at this point that we go ahead and allocate the total of 200,000, and that we work with both the arts and culture and the traditional nonprofits and kind of see what this develops. We are coming back to the council on August 18th, and so we could certainly report back on what kind of applications we're seeing, at least at that moment in time. If nothing else, I would suggest that we at least allocate half for the nonprofits and half of the arts and culture, and at least have those safeguards in place until we report back on the 18th.
Okay, so you're proposing then 100,000 to arts and culture and 100,000 to nonprofits
as a general allocation at this point, and report back on the 18th.
All right. Council Member Milliman, and then Mayor Pro Tem.
Mark. I appreciate that explanation, and I would agree with you in splitting it half and half. And
Kelly, could you speak just a little louder for us? Thank you.
sure, and I will reiterate that I do think that helping the nonprofits in our community that are serving specific populations or groups of people is important. And but I also think supporting our arts and culture is also hugely important to the overall mental health of our community. And I do think it is a driver for our economy. And we need to create some more positiveness right now in our hearts and our souls. So I think helping both the nonprofits and like I said, the ones that service different groups of people and the arts and culture, it's all a holistic benefit to the city of Littleton.
Great. Thank you. Council or Mayor Pro Tem Millen, and then Councilmember Driscoll.
Yeah, I just I guess want to share a thought that council seems to be creating a choice between sort of core human services like food and shelter on the one hand and arts and culture on the other. But there are other types of nonprofits listed on the eligible organizations list, including fraternal organizations and business organizations, and also charitable organizations or charitable programs. And there's no guarantee that a nonprofit falling under one of those headings is going to be providing something like food and shelter. So I want council to make sure that we're heading in the direction of the policy we want to achieve here. If the majority of council wants to support core, shelter and food, then we need to talk about business organizations, fraternal organizations, and I guess that's it.
All right. Thank you, Council Member Driscoll.
I just want to reiterate and what Karina and Kelly had said, and I like Mark's recommendation of allocating half to each and revisiting back on the 18th.
All right. I have no hands up. We do have a motion on the table and a second. But we have Council Member Grove just raised her hand, and then Mayor Pro Tem.
I'm kind of seeing if an amendment is even worth it. And right now we're kind of split. From what I get, Karina, Kelly, and Pat are for the 50-50. Scott, I'm not sure. Carol and I are more for the other one. So I don't know, Jerry, would you weigh in and see if an amendment's even worth it?
Well, we'll hear from Mayor Pro Tem first, and then me.
Yeah, I guess maybe let me tailor my comment a little more closely to the suggestion that the city manager is making. If we divide the funds half and half between human services on the one hand and arts and culture on the other hand, then we're either leaving no money for fraternal organizations and business organizations and what we're calling charitable organizations and or charitable programs, or else 4/5 of the organizations that we're deeming eligible, the types of organizations that we're deeming eligible, are going to get 100,000, and 1/5 of the types of organizations that we're deeming eligible are going to get half the money. And I don't know if that's the way we want to approach this, right? Do we want some amount to go to business organizations, some amount to go to fraternal organizations? And sorry, I don't know if you can see this. That's probably not helpful, but the list of eligible organizations on our Littleton Cares Nonprofit Assistance Grants eligibility sheet, I think we need to address some of these other types of organizations, not just say half's going to human services and half's going to arts and culture, because we're leaving out quite a few types of organizations here from our discussion.
Would you like me to share that?
Was that Denise?
Sure. Yeah, Denise, that would maybe be helpful for just a quick second.
Go ahead, Denise.
1 minute, please. Okay, can you see the screen?
Yes.
Yeah, so
Okay.
right there in the middle where it says eligible organizations.
May I point one thing out real quickly too? See the red line here? The city managers met with the county, and remember we talked about the fact that they all agreed that they're going to have requests that would support rent and mortgage and food programs back to the county. So what we would be considering would not include that, if that's any help.
Great. All right. Thank you very much. Scott, did that take care of your concern there?
Maybe if Mark could just sort of jump in and give us his thoughts on my comment, if he has any.
Well, probably not at this point. I think it's been difficult for staff here to get a better understanding of what might be possible. I think what you're in actual applications, let me just say it that way. Again, Love Inc. has gone a long ways to at least coordinate what might be possible, at least on some of the nonprofits. But again, we don't have any specifics. They didn't submit anything about, scale of funds necessary. So we don't really have a good feel for that. We don't even know if their applications necessarily would be eligible. So we obviously have to still work through that. So I can tell council's kind of wrestling with this. I don't really have another suggestion beyond just what I've offered. So I guess that's probably where I would leave it at this point for council.
All right, thank you. And then I'm up next, and then it'll Council Member Fay, then Elrod. Where I stand on this is, well, a couple questions I do have. First, is this a possibility of this program may be extended anyway? As we were talking the other day, instead of the end of 2020, it may be extended another 6 months. Was that part of this funding?
Yes, Mayor. I did share a note with council here earlier in the week. There is discussion at the U.S. Congress level about extending the CARES Act 12 to 18 months. Of course, we can't count on it at the moment here, so the Congress still has to work through that process. So we have to, my opinion, proceed here knowing what we have today, which is the end of the year. And so we do have, again, a balance of about 1.7 million here that we would be discussing on the 18th. And so I think, again, my suggestion is trying to allocate some funding for the nonprofits in total so that we can at least get the application process moving for them and then report back on the 18th about what we see. That would be probably my best suggestion at this point. Otherwise, we may have to pull this back and do some more work with the nonprofits to understand what really is possible.
Okay, yeah, right now. I guess where I stand on this is I'm not as excited about giving half of this out to arts and culture. I do want some to go, but I'm a little concerned about doing half of it when we have some other nonprofit issues that the money could be very beneficial, which helps out a lot of citizens. I do want to see some money go toward it. I'm not as excited about the 50-50 thing. And then next up is Carol Fay, and then Elrod, then Pro Tem, then Driscoll.
Last week, when we asked why fraternal organizations were on that list, Denise Stevens' answer was because she saw them on a list that another city had. That to me doesn't seem like a good rationale for having it. I would like to propose an amendment, and I don't know where, Jerry.
You can propose it anytime. Now might be a good time. I would encourage you to do so.
I would like to propose an amendment which goes, I move to amend the Littleton Cares nonprofit assistant grant criteria to exclude fraternal organizations as being eligible for assistance.
I'll second that. Okay, so we have a second by Valdez. Carol, would you like to just elaborate a little bit more?
Yes, I was surprised to see the fraternal organizations show up on the list. And Denise said that she put them there only because she saw them on a list that another city or municipality had. So I don't think that's a good solid reason. I think Denise's spirit was to be helpful and offer us a lot of options to accept or turn down. And so I would like to turn down this one.
Okay. All right. Do we have any other discussion regarding the amendment? Council member, let's see, Elrod is up next. Is this in regards to the amendment? Okay, so we'll just, if we can, let's keep it to the amendment at this point. We'll go to Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, I don't think I disagree with Carol's motion. I just don't think I understand, though, what counts as a fraternal organization and what they might be delivering in terms of even human services, nonprofit assistance. I mean, are we thinking of just like the Elks, or does something like Rotary fall into this? Because depending on who we're talking about, I may absolutely want to support that organization.
May I clarify what I think that is intended by it?
Please do.
I do think it includes Elks and Rotary organizations like that, because those organizations do have programs that are charitable. Again, as Mark pointed out, we would probably have to see what comes in. I have no problem if you all want to exclude it, but I think that's what they were thinking, is that there are organizations like that that do have charitable programs.
Okay, that makes sense. All right, then Councilmember Elrod, your hand is still raised, and then Driscoll, and this related again to the amendment? Councilmember
Yes.
Elrod? Okay, Councilmember Driscoll, go ahead.
Yeah, and thank you, Denise, for that explanation. That was my understanding also, and being an Elks member, they are huge supporters of the veterans, and to that point, it's more to the individual or to the families of the vets. So I'm a huge supporter of that and any other fraternal organization that supports our community.
Okay, we'll take one more question on this, and then let's go to a vote. Councilmember Milliman.
Denise, I appreciate that explanation as well. I'm a huge supporter of the Rotary Club, so I, in that sense, I would support fraternal organizations being included in that list. Great.
Let's go ahead and go to a vote on the amendment, and the amendment is and I didn't write it down. Colleen, could you read back the amendment for us?
Absolutely. Councilmember Fay wanted to make an amendment to the nonprofits to exclude fraternal organizations from eligibility.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Paratim's dying to get in there.
Yeah, I mean, there's still discussion on the amendment. We're going to have it and not just proceed to the vote. I haven't exhausted my 10 minutes yet. So my comment is, I wonder if there's a way to distinguish between the fraternal organization and the charitable activities of the fraternal organization in the same way that we're distinguishing between churches, which are excluded, and the nonprofit activities or the charitable activities of the church, which we want to be funding. I don't want to be funding any and all aspects of what fraternal organizations are up to, but I'm absolutely in favor of supporting their charitable activities.
Great. All righty, Council. If there's no more discussion, okay, we do have the motion. Does anybody have a question about what the motion is? If not, a thumb up is in support of the motion, and a thumbs down is opposed to the motion. So go ahead and vote.
Wait a second. Opposed to what? We're agreeing
the
to
amendment. The amendment.
So Councilmember Grove, a vote in favor is to support exclusion of the fraternal businesses, and a vote against would nullify the amendment.
Correct.
The vote is 2 in favor, with Council members Grove and Fay in favor. The motion fails.
Great, thank you. We still have a main motion on the table. Is there any more discussion or amendments?
I would still like to put forth my amendment for vote.
And what is your amendment?
I would have a motion of the $200,000 awarded to nonprofits, $150,000 would go towards charitable organizations and or charitable programs that benefit individuals. The remainder could be distributed to arts programs suggested by staff.
Okay, we have a motion and a second by Councilmember Fay. Okay, we have one hand up for discussion. Councilmember Grove, would you like to discuss start with you?
I think it's great to put, I think we need to put a higher percentage of funding towards individuals than the arts for some of the reasons that Carol stated earlier. We've already given, close to $500,000 to businesses, and this is the first extension to our individuals. And I'm looking at it more of the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You have to take care of the basics before you can move to some of the more esoteric things. I love the arts. I would love to go to a concert. I would personally benefit. I know many people would personally benefit, but I think we have to really consider the people in our community that are really, really struggling with basics.
Okay, I don't see any hands up. Do we have any hands? Mayor Pro Tem and then Elrod.
Yeah, I agree with the sentiment 100% from Councilmember Grove. I just don't think I'll support the amendment as it's specifically articulated, because I think, if we only fund nonprofits supporting individuals, what about nonprofits supporting families or, et cetera, et cetera? I think a more direct way to go about this is to just take the bulk of the funding and devote it to what we're calling on our eligibility guidelines, human services, and just limit the percentage that's available for arts and culture to something like 25% or whatever council decides. I just don't want, again, I agree with the sentiment. I just don't want the unintended consequences. I think there are other nonprofits doing that kind of work in terms of, the Maslow's hierarchy, food and shelter and whatever that aren't directly supporting individuals. So I would oppose the amendment.
I would be happy to change that, Scott, to instead saying to benefit.
Wait, we already have a motion.
Yeah, we've got to
change the motion.
Yeah.
I can amend it.
No, we already have it. It's already been seconded, so it's already on the table. If we can vote on this particular amendment, if it goes down, you can make another amendment. That is. Scott, were you through?
Yep. Thanks.
Okay. Council Member Elrod.
I think, I understand the sentiment. I think what we're being, this is a little bit arbitrary. And I think, again, in the staff memo, it asks to allow some flexibility to staff. And the reality is, we don't know what's going to come in. And even what comes in is then based on like a scaling. So there may be an arts organization that's like 0 to 10,000, so they would only qualify for 1,000. And we might have a social services organization that will get 7,000 because they're bigger. So there's so many moving numbers and calculations here that I think it's really hard to discern where we may even land. So again, I think in the spirit of moving on with the intent of the support of our grants here is we've put in an eligibility requirement. The intent here is that it's adding value to the community. Whether, I don't know what the right number may be, 50-50, 70-20, 70-30, whatever. There's so many moving parts to this and so many components to discerning who's going to submit, whether they meet that eligibility, and to what extent they're actually, what they're going to get, right? It's not a fixed number. So I don't know that we're in a place to make a a informed suggestion on any kind of split in this. So I really think we have to come back to the point of this is a designation of a nonprofit. And to Scott's earlier point, it covers a lot of different areas. It's not just social services and arts and cultures. And again, how would you define arts and culture if they're providing community outreach for lower income kids that are needing to engage in some kind of activity as their parents are trying to go back to school. So then we start getting into that, how do you define which is which? So I think this is just not a good approach that we're taking.
Thank you. Councilmember Driscoll, you lowered your hand? Did you?
I lowered my hand. Karina basically summed what I was going to say. I mean, we can get caught up in the minutia, but the reality is we're going to have these applications come in. Staff is going to go ahead and weigh it out. And again, as Mark said, on the 18th, we're going to be able to say, hey, we've got 3 applications for arts and culture. We got 20 applications for nonprofits, and we got some fraternal applications. I don't think we need to slice and dice it tonight. I just think I'd like to move forward with approving the amendment, approving the original amendment with the 200,000, and then let's see how it plays out on April 18th. I don't think we have to solve the problems tonight.
All right, and I did have one question for the city manager. Thank you, Patrick. I do have one question. The main motion is for a total of 200,000. Did it divide it up at all as far as how much to arts and cults? Okay, it does not.
No.
Okay. All right. So we do have an amendment on the table. So that's where we want to stick with right now, which was to make it 50,000 for arts and culture, and then was it 150 went to the other nonprofit type. And I know our city attorney would like to say something.
Just to further clarify, so we have a motion that's been seconded. It's on the table. Technically, the motion could be withdrawn if it had consent of the person who seconded the motion, as well as a majority of council.
Reed, I'm going to go back to Robert Rules of Order. Once it goes to a second, it goes to the full council. So at this point, we have to vote on it.
It's in the city council's legislative rules, but whatever you're comfortable with doing, whatever council wants to.
Well, council, I believe we should go ahead and vote on it unless there's a reason not to. So we have a motion and a second on the table, and that is it is 50,000 would go to the arts and culture, and 150 would go to nonprofit. So a yes vote, a thumbs up, that is to approve that.
Barry, Barry, you
just 1 second. Let me finish, please. And a thumbs down would be to deny that motion. Go ahead, Councilmember Fay.
I heard you say unless there's a reason not to. I think a reason not to is that the person who proposed the amendment said that that isn't really what she wanted. She wanted to change it. And I, as the person who seconded, agree that is not what I really interpreted as when she said it. So it seems we have a motion on the table that nobody really wants on the table.
Then that would be just a vote. That's a vote. So let's go ahead and go forward with the vote. Mayor Pro Tem, do you have an issue with going forward with the vote?
No, I think that's the correct approach.
Yeah. Okay. So again, a thumbs up is for the approval of the amendment, and a thumbs down is to oppose. So let's go ahead and vote.
The vote is 3 in favor, with Mayor Valdez, Councilmember Grove, and Councilmember Fay voting yes. The motion fails.
Okay, we do have a main motion on the table, and that was for the entire 200,000. And as I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, please, Mark. Is that
Jerry?
It's not divided. Please, may I let me finish my comment, if I may. So, Mark, so we're going. So it's the entire 200,000, but it doesn't divide it up. Is that correct?
Point of order. Point of order, City Attorney. Does a council member have an opportunity to make yet another amendment at this point?
Yes. The answer is yes. Yeah.
Correct. It just can't be on the same item.
Right.
It can't be the same motion.
So Mark,
on the same item?
The same motion. Apologies.
Okay. So again, back to my question there, Mark. It's the main motion is the entire 200 and it's not divided up anyway yet.
That is correct.
Okay, cool. All right. We do have Mayor Pro Tem. Your hand is up.
Sorry, that was Councilmember Fay's point of order addressed.
I believe so.
Okay.
Councilmember Fay, you're okay?
I think what the city attorney said that Councilmember Grove could not rephrase her amendment. Is that right?
No, you can have multiple amendments and proposals for amendments. It just can't be the exact same amendment over and over.
Okay.
So if she wanted to rephrase the amendment, she could rephrase the amendment.
Right.
Thank you.
In terms of, as opposed to the.
That helped.
I'm sorry, yeah. Councilmember Fay.
Do you want to rephrase it?
Yes, I do. I just don't know when the right time is.
Yeah, and just 1 second, if you will. Scott, did you still have your hand up?
Yeah, thanks. I'm inclined to support Mark's suggestion that we just pass the main motion and come back and see what kinds of applications are coming in. But I guess I want to ask the city manager or probably the city clerk, just because I'm a bit of a stickler for this kind of a thing. Do we need to amend the main motion to adopt the city manager's proposal?
No, the main motion is what it is. Both amendments have failed. We're back to the main motion, which is the blanket amount of 200,000 without any differentiation.
Right. But do we need to? You know what? I'm not going to overcomplicate it. I'll leave it alone.
We can vote on the main motion as it was made without further amendment, unless a council member wants to offer an amendment.
And
that's right.
Still affect Mark's suggestion. I mean, that would still be. In other words, we don't need to amend the main motion to adopt city manager's suggestion that we let these that we let these applications come in and then we revisit.
Well, that's all just administrative and really has nothing to do with the passage of adopting the amount of money that we're granting.
Okay, thank you.
Are you good?
Yep.
Okay, good. We'll go to, first we'll go Valdez, then Grove. And I am in favor of the main motion. If it's not dividing anything up at this point, I think that I'm in favor of the main motion. We will go now to Council Member Grove.
I'm in favor of the main motion too. I just want to, we just really didn't resolve it last time. So that's why I'm bringing it up in this meeting. So I would like to propose another amendment, same sentiment, but different verbiage, and tell me when the time is right.
Now's the time.
Okay. I would like to propose of the 200,000 awarded to nonprofits, 150,000 would go towards charitable organizations and or charitable programs that benefit human services. The remainder would be distributed to the arts programs by staff unless the applications for human services do not equal $150,000. That's the motion.
Okay, Council, we need a second before discussion.
Second.
We have a second. Okay, Council Member Grove.
I think that gives us a lot of leeway. I think the sentiment is very clear if other council members agree. And then if we don't get 150,000, then we can say, okay, then shift it more to other things like the arts.
Okay, Council Member Driscoll. You're muted, Patrick.
Again, I think we're overcomplicating this. Mark had said no set specific amounts have been applied anywhere. So to pin it down to 150,000, 140,000, whatever the number is, let's let the applications come in and fall where they fall, and we're beating a dead horse here.
All right, thank you. Any more comments, Council? Colleen, could you read back the motion for us, please? The amendment?
Mayor, I would love to. However, I don't write as fast as Councilmember Grove speaks. So if we could ask Councilmember Grove to read it again, I would appreciate it.
Oh, sorry, Colleen.
No
I'm
worries.
happy to. Of the $200,000 awarded to nonprofits, $150,000 would go towards charitable organizations and/or charitable programs that benefits human services. The remainder would be distributed to the arts programs suggested by staff unless human services applications did not meet $150,000.
Okay, Council, that is the amendment. So a thumbs up is to support that amendment. A thumbs down is opposed. So let's go ahead and vote.
The vote is 2 in favor, 5 against. The motion fails.
All right. We are back to our main motion. Do we have any more discussion on the main motion? Seeing none. Colleen, could you read back the main motion, please?
Again, I would love to, but I'm going to have to pull it up. I don't have it in front of me. Give me just one moment.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have that up right now?
Yeah, who made the main motion?
The main motion was made by Councilmember Milliman, seconded by Councilmember Driscoll.
Okay, Kelly, do you have that in front of you?
I'm almost there, Jerry.
Okay.
My system's just a little slow.
All right, thank you.
I've got it. Just in the interest of moving things forward, I've got the text.
Go ahead, yeah, move it.
Thank you.
The motion is to approve the funding of nonprofit assistance grant, to approve the funding of a nonprofit assistance grant program in the amount not to exceed $200,000 from CARES Act funds.
There you go. All right. A thumbs up is in favor of that motion. A thumbs down is opposed. So ready to vote? Vote.
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion carries unanimously.
Great. We did it. We did it. All right. Okay. Under agenda item 8 on the second readings, we have no second readings tonight. So right now it is 8:15, and council, if there's nothing else, we're going to go into a study session. Does anybody need a break? Okay, we'll take 5 minutes. We'll take a 5-minute break. So right now it is 8:15, and we will come back at 8:20. So as of 8:15, we are adjourned. I call to order the City of Littleton City Council virtual study session for Tuesday, August 4th, 2020. The time is 8:21. All right, council. Well, full council is here. We're going to move right down, and we have a couple items tonight. So we're going to move right down into our first topic, which is ID number 20-188, Downtown Historic District. We do have a staff presentation, and council, we will need to give direction to councils, to staff at the end here. So I'll turn it over to the city manager.
All right, thank you, Mayor. If I may, council, let me just do a little introduction here, and then I'm going to turn it over to Jennifer Henninger, our Community Development Director. So I think a few weeks ago, when we were looking at phase 2 for our downtown, I shared with council just a couple of thoughts, and it looked like there might be somewhat of a struggle trying to understand how the code 2 or phase 2 might be applied in the downtown, and specifically around Alamo was kind of my sense of an issue. And so I did suggest to council that perhaps you might be interested in hearing from staff how we might look at a process that would run in parallel to the ULUC for historic preservation here along Alamo and specifically the downtown. So again, just stepping back, in fact, kind of referring a little bit to the discussion we had at the very beginning through public comment, you know, we've been on a journey here for over 3 years with a vision, a comp plan, and now the code. So the comp plan always anticipated that after the ULUC, we would have a discussion around historic preservation. Again, acknowledging the fact we can't do all things all at once. And so there was some intent here with a schedule. Again, however, as we look at downtown, there again seemed to be some kind of a struggle as we looked at Alamo. So this presentation this evening is a way for us to kind of accelerate that at a level that we believe staff can manage. So it's an alternative here to approach this. And we're looking for staff to kind of, or excuse me, council discussion on this, and then ultimately direction if you would like us to proceed. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jennifer.
Just having some audio visual issues. Sorry. I'm going to share our presentation.
It's an 8-page presentation, council. Should be exciting.
Excellent. Yes. So as Mark said, we have brought to you on July 10th, you received a staff report that outlined all the different options that staff has been considering on this historic district issue. What we are before you this evening is, you guys see the full screen? I apologize.
Yep.
Okay,
yes.
Just wanted to make sure. What we're looking for this evening is confirmation of the direction that staff can offer for this historic district formation. And that is a parallel fast track with our ULUC, and that will involve Historic Preservation Board. Also addressing historic preservation more detailed in the phase 2, and also updating the historic preservation code through our ULUC. Hang on. So the timeline that we have here before you, and this is also in your council packet, outlines this parallel fast track that we offer. And that is working with HPB and the staff subcommittee and setting up these subcommittees. The subcommittees will work on very specific tasks, such as historic surveys of downtown, determine historic significance, contributing and non-contributing structures, determining what those are, defining the historic theme, defining a historic boundary, and modernization of the code. Staff researched and considered the 4 potential options. Again, those are outlined in your staff report, and we have weighed all of the options and feel this is our most successful path what we are recommending to get to the historic district. Some considerations that staff did think about is how this effort supports the city's 20-year vision and the policies of the comprehensive plan. Also, the benefits and obligations associated with the historic district designation per the city code, impacts on nearby neighborhoods, benefits and drawbacks of our existing opt-in district, and continuing or expanding the incentives to a larger district. There will be some fiscal impacts, and those are yet to be determined, and that will depend on council direction. Some potential impacts could be consulting services needed to supplement staff capacity, both for the district formation as well as if we use staff time on the district formation, we might have, excuse me, some gaps in the development review. And we're looking for council direction on these level of service impacts. So the next steps that we are suggesting is to do this parallel fast track that staff has laid before you, working very closely with the Historic Preservation Board, and we will get them going on the tasks outlined at their August 17th meeting. We continue with our phase 2 amendments that will reflect our historic assets. We will integrate historic aspects into the ULUC studios and our outreach, and also update the Historic Preservation Code in our ULUC process. So with that, I can answer any questions. We also have Andrea Minma, our Historic Preservation Planner, on the line as well.
All right, we have one hand up, and we'll begin with Council Member Grove.
And I don't know if this is for Andrea or Jennifer. In terms of next steps and looking direction, are you also looking direction on option 1 or option 2 that you mentioned, whether we expand the opt-in Main Street district to include Alamo, or an all-inclusive district that would be for everybody for both of those, the Main Street and Alamo? I don't see that on the next step, so I didn't know if we should go that far.
We are not looking direction for those at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Council Member Elrod.
Hi, so sorry about that. Okay, so you're not looking for direction on that. So are you taking one of these as an option, or you're still going to evaluate that? I mean, just want to understand how you're going to move forward if we, which one are you picking, I guess?
That will be all part in our parallel fast track. These are all things that will have to be considered.
So honestly, I'm not understanding the, so maybe if you go back to the timeline, I'm not clear what you're asking, sorry.
Yeah, let's clarify the direction that you're wanting to get from us, and that's where you are too, aren't you, Karina? Yeah. So, Mark, could you restate for us the direction that you want, and it involves the consulting services, I believe?
Well, I think what ultimately we're asking council here is if you would like us to accelerate the historic district process and run it in parallel with the ULUC. There are processes that or opportunities we'd have to evaluate, so we're not necessarily looking for required or opt-in. We'd have to evaluate that over time. If we did not take this approach and the council said no, then we would default back to the original concept of the comp plan, which would do it after the completion of the ULUC.
So again, just to clarify, so the direction you're asking from us is to use a consulting service so that we can go parallel with our UL, all that good stuff, the universal code that we're working on. Or if the other direction is not to use a consultant, just use our existing staff, which means it won't be done until after our universal code is updated.
I think what staff is trying to communicate here is that as we evaluate the options, it may be necessary to bring consultants into the process. And so we would have to identify as a placeholder in the budget process in September some number. And then depending on how this plays out and the direction that council would take it, it may be accomplished by staff, or we may have to supplement that to fill some of the gaps. And I think Jennifer identified one of the issues we have to be sensitive to is just simply the development review process in total throughout the city. And so we're trying to accomplish it as much as possible with staff and supplement with consultants only when necessary.
Okay, all right. We're going to go back down to council questions here. We have Council Member Grove and then Mayor Pro Tem to start.
I would advocate and support staff running this as a parallel project instead of waiting until after the fact. Everybody knows that I'm a big advocate of historic preservation, and I think doing it in parallel keeps the project alive and doesn't risk doing it more piecemeal. This way it's more integrated.
All right, thank you. We will go to Council Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, just in the interest of doing my part to give staff direction, I'm very strongly in favor of the city running this historic preservation process in parallel with the ULUC process. And I'll just, say right now that I'm going to be in favor of an all-inclusive district that covers Alamo and Main Street.
All right, thank you. Council Member Milliman.
I would agree with that. I support option 3 wholeheartedly, creating an all-inclusive district. I think it's super important for the community character that we so love and strive for, and is throughout our comprehensive plan. And I will tell you, I know that there's a lot of property owners, specifically on Main Street, that have put a lot of time, blood, sweat, tears, money into their properties, and it's important that we we expand our historic district to include Alamo as well. That's it.
Great, thank you. Council Member Elrod.
Yes, I absolutely support moving in parallel. That's one of the main reasons I brought this up is to bring it to the forefront and to start addressing it now, knowing that any day later is a day too late potentially. So I am completely in favor of moving this in parallel. I think one of the other things, the benefits that we'll get from that is there might be some efficiencies as we're reaching out to our community through the ULUC. We're able to reach out on this as well. So I think there's not only efficiency for us, but also just respecting the time of our community as well. And then to Pam's point, this becomes then truly integrated, and that again has, I think, always been our approach when we really talk about character. We know that the historic elements of our downtown are very defining character, and to not take that into consideration, or I don't want to say not take into consideration, because we are, but to take this strong stance and really focus on what and where historic preservation needs to absolutely be upheld in our community, I think reinforces that and seals that for us. So I am absolutely in favor of this.
Great. All right. Thank you very much. And I too am in favor of running parallel with the ULUC code. It just makes sense to do it at the same time. That way we can make sure it's being protected as well. We haven't heard from Council Member Driscoll or Fay on the issue.
Yeah,
Councilmember Fay?
I agree.
Or Driscoll?
I'm sorry, I didn't raise my hand. I agree with everything everybody else has said. Thanks.
Okay, great. Councilmember Fay?
Yes, I agree. Let's run it in parallel.
All right. Well, that's I think Councilmember Grove has something, but we do have all of council, it looks like, wanting to run parallel. Councilmember Grove?
I think our direction is very clear. 7 people want to run in parallel. I also noticed too that to add to what Scott and Kelly said, I'm also an advocate of an all-inclusive district, and working on one for 3 years. So that's kind of 3 in favor, somebody else is in favor, then that kind of would give some, 4, then you've got your additional direction, even though we weren't going to go that far, just to get an
let's
idea
leave this for what we're going for tonight. I think absolutely that's going to be a good direction to go. Are you ready to take that on now, City Manager, to take that direction from us?
Well, I think we need to play out some communications internally and externally about some of these issues before we ask council to kind of wait. That'd be my suggestion. I hear clearly there's a pretty strong interest around that, but I'd like to think through kind of a participation process here just to make sure that we're pretty effective.
I think that's a good plan. So the direction that we're just going to go with tonight is just whether or not use consultant. And I think you have your direction to run it parallel.
We do.
Is there any other discussion on this? I think not. Well, great. Then let's go ahead and move on to our next item.
Thank you.
So Jerry, just very quickly.
Pam, Pam's hand is still up. Did you want to say something, Pam? Okay, Karina, you are up.
So there was really, I wanted to say first, thank you to you and Andrea for putting this together. There was a lot of great information in here. Really appreciated that. Do you want to get some questions now? Some of it for me was just clarifying and understanding, maybe even terminology. Is that information you want to start hearing from us now, or hold it until you're ready?
Probably not this evening. But if you already have those questions, please, by all means, share them with us, and happy to answer those questions.
All right. Good enough, Karina? Good. All right. Cool. All right. Let's go ahead and move on to our next item, which is the 1B. It is ID number 20-187, Priority-Based Budgeting 101, and use in the 2021 budget. And I'll turn it over to the city manager.
All right. Thank you, Mayor, Council. As we are keenly aware, we are stepping into a budget process that is unique in time and unique in process. So what we have historically done is not necessarily going to apply here this particular year. And so we're kicking this off with perhaps one of the most important tools that we will be using as we try to look how to manage our expenditures and ultimately reduce costs. And we've had the last couple of months some pretty decent news around sales tax, but again, we've got a pretty heavy problem here. And so we do know that we're going to have to make some significant cuts in the general fund, as well as some other funds. But general fund is the one that obviously has most of the operations of the organization. So this evening here is just a quick couple of slides just to get us all back on the same page about what is priority-based budgeting, and then how we are actually going to apply it here in our 3rd year of use, by the way. And so I think the staff is going to be quickly to tell you that no city has taken priority-based budgeting as fast and as far as we have. And I know they are very proud of that. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Tiffany Hooten and let her carry on with the presentation.
Sure. Thank you, Mark. This evening, the agenda you have before you is priority-based budgeting, and we're going to kind of give you kind of a highlight of where we were, where we are today, and then how we're going to use it in the 2021 budget. This evening, I have Stacy Covington here with us, and she's actually our budget analyst, and she has taken PBB by the reins and is moving forward with the organization and helping kind of guide decisions and information related to the PBB program. And she's going to walk us through her presentation. I'll just get our PowerPoint shared here.
There we go.
Perfect.
There we are. All right, good evening, everyone. My name is Stacy Covington, and as Tiffany said, I am the budget analyst with the City of Littleton. So during this presentation, I will be providing a refresher or an introduction if you are new to all of this on priority-based budgeting principles and its implementation in the City of Littleton. And then I will provide an update on the use of PBB in the 2021 budget process. So beginning with PBB 101, priority-based budgeting is a system of budgeting that prioritizes the allocation of resources based on the programs that provide the most value to the community. So the two sort of key words here are programs and priorities. And programs in PBB lingo refer basically to the services the city provides. They answer the question, what does the city do? A program can be external and community facing, such as snow removal or teen library services, or it can be an internal support program, such as employee relations in HR or accounting services. So PBB allocates costs to those programs, which is different from other methods like line item budgeting, for example, that allocates costs to accounting line items such as office supplies or a salary expense. The other most important characteristic of PBB is priorities, because it prioritizes spending based on the mix of programs that best supports the city's goals. And this is in contrast to the common practice of using the prior year budget as the basis of the next year's budget, without necessarily giving a lot of thought to the changing needs and priorities of the community. PBB offers numerous benefits compared to other budgeting methods. First and foremost is the ability to invest in the portfolio of services that best meets the needs of the community. The programmatic aspect makes it easier to understand the true cost of services. For example, it will probably be a lot easier to understand what it means for the city to invest X number of dollars in snow removal versus trying to interpret what it means for the city to be spending X number of dollars on office supplies. And this increased understandability in turn increases transparency. And then the prioritization process causes past patterns of spending to be analyzed, thus supporting more efficient and better uses of resources going forward. And PBB can also be used as a performance tracking and management tool because allocation of resources is based on outcomes and goals. This is sort of the basic process of PBB in a nutshell. It begins with identifying and defining the programs the city offers and assigning those costs to those programs. The results the city wants to prioritize are then identified, and then the programs are scored against those results. And at that point, you then have the data necessary to make decisions on how to maximize resource allocation and improve service offering. Now, the results piece is obviously a really important piece, so I wanted to talk about that specifically. Every program is scored against either community results or governance results. If a program is external and community facing, it is scored against the community results. And those are all based on the language and the values and the contents of the Envision Littleton Comprehensive and Transportation Master Plans. If a program is one of those internal support programs, they are scored against the governance results, and each of those results is a characteristic of good governance. And each result, both community results and governance results, has specific results definitions to help guide scoring. In addition to the results, whether internal or external, every program is also scored against program attributes. And program attributes are not necessarily goal-oriented per se, but they do provide important information about a program that you're evaluating. So, for example, a particular program may not align highly with a specific goal or result, but if the state of Colorado basically requires that we provide the program, then it's going to still score really highly in the mandate category. Once programs are scored against results and attributes, our online PBB system provided by our consultants ResourceX then generates a composite score by assigning each program into a quartile. And the first quartile indicates that the program is most aligned with results overall, and the fourth quartile indicates that it is least aligned. And the quartiles are something that you will see reflected on our PBB documents pretty often. So that concludes PBB 101, and this is just a brief timeline of implementation of PBB at the city so far. As you can see, we are currently in our third year of implementation. 2018 was the first year. And during 2018, our consultants did our initial system setup, and then staff established the program inventory, defined results, costed and scored the programs, and held a peer review for those scores. And that's actually a lot of work for the first year. Like Mark mentioned, our consultants did let us know that no other municipality or county has taken it as far and as fast as we have. During the second year, we once again did the updates, which included updating the program list, reviewing the scores, recosting the programs. But then we took it a step further by exploring how to use the data to support budget decisions and make program improvements. This was accomplished via a formal program review project. We asked each department to review 3 programs for opportunities using a blueprint tool provided by our consultants. The project was a big undertaking and learning experience and accomplished introducing a PBB framework to our processes. Another fun fact, we actually gained recognition in the national PBB community that year for the innovation and implementation of what was then dubbed the Littleton Pick 3 program review. Another important event that occurred in 2019 that was related to PBB was the adoption of the Envision Littleton Comprehensive and Transportation Master Plans. Their contents were used to revise the community results in 2020 and going forward, which was an important step in furthering the implementation of the leadership framework. That brings us to the present day. So in early 2020, we once again did all of those system updates, this time in record time, now that we had 2 years of experience under our belt. And we were poised to once again embark on a program review, but then COVID happened. So although COVID required that we adjust our approaches for the year, we were actually really fortunate to already have the PBB data at our fingertips, as this was extremely helpful in responding to an unanticipated economic turn of events. So this is the blueprint tool that I mentioned on the earlier slide. And as you can see, you can use it to evaluate a program for a variety of opportunities and needs. However, this year it was necessary to focus almost exclusively on cost reductions. So for this year, we ultimately asked departments to review all of their programs across the board for opportunities to reduce service level, to free up resources so that we could maintain our most critical services. Although this approach results in some departments being more affected than others, it also helps us avoid those arbitrary across the board cuts that put us at risk of reducing or eliminating our most valuable services, in addition to our less critical programs. To assist departments with this service level review, they were provided with an essential services analysis based on scoring, program quartiles, policy questions for consideration that were generated by the system, and personnel allocations. It's really remarkable the amount of data that we can get out of our system. So ultimately, the main vehicle for finding opportunities for service level reductions was the Early Retirement Incentive Program devised by Human Resources. And this was a voluntary program for Littleton employees who are eligible for retirement in 2020. As a service provider, of course, the city's largest expense is personnel costs. But with these voluntary departures came the opportunity for departments to decrease service levels where it made the most sense while decreasing their overall personnel needs. Both ERI-based as well as other programmatic reductions will likely be driven by reducing service levels in lower quartile programs, considering programs where we may have been over-providing to mandates or needs, and also programs that have been impacted by the effects of COVID itself. And that could be restrictions on face-to-face interaction, changes in demands, things like that. In terms of where you're going to see PBB and its results reflected in the budget process, we will be covering the outcomes in more detail in our study sessions in September. At that time, you will be provided with a summary of reductions by department, service level change, and budget impact. We will also be presenting PBB program highlights and budget highlights in the document itself again. And you will also likely see PBB reflected in any policy questions that might be brought forward. And so that is where we are today. We look forward to bringing council the results of our efforts and having more discussion around PBB and the 2021 budget in September. And at this time, we'll be happy to answer any questions.
Great. Thank you very much, Stacy. And we have one hand up, and that is Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, thanks. That was a great presentation. I appreciate it. So obviously, a lot of the virtue of priority-based budgeting is prioritizing one program in comparison to other programs. How do you make sure that money within a program is being spent efficiently and effectively?
Are you referring to how do we cost to the program, or how
yeah, let's say council says,
evaluate?
okay, we want to prioritize snow removal over teen services, I guess was the other example on the slides. How do we make sure that the money that's going to snow removal is being spent as effectively and efficiently as possible, so that we have an accurate picture of what the cost of the program actually looks like?
Yeah, so I think, the priority-based budgeting tool is to use forward thinking and understanding what our budget's going to look like in the next few years. I think one of the aspects that we are looking at the system is to provide analytics and some data related to that, so that we can potentially track the number of miles or the number of patrons that we work with within the PBB program, so that we might have an opportunity to kind of look back and see how that has moved forward over the past few years. I don't know, Arlene or...
Yeah, let me maybe just give a concrete example. So let's say, council says, wow, we really want to prioritize our snow removal program. How do we make sure that, we're purchasing the best snow plow for the best cost and not buying a more expensive one?
So I think that's evaluating the program itself and just working with the departments. We have a purchasing and contracting division that we're working on right now that's going to be working directly with the departments to ensure that we're getting the best price on equipment and things like that, which we currently do. We're just going to try to enhance some of that. And I think it's just evaluating, it's the blueprint that we created for departments that's always available for them to use. And part of that is looking at outsourcing, looking at efficiencies in how we're doing the program or running the program. And so I really think the blueprint is a guide for departments to be able to do that. Challenged, sorry.
So what kind of criteria is that department applying within the programs to make sure that money's being spent effectively? That we get the best price on snowplow X, yeah.
Mark, did you want to chime in at this point?
Well, if I may, I think the Mayor Pro Tem's question is ultimately the core of what priority-based budgeting is trying to address in the long run. And so there are many layers to this question, but ultimately the real piece that we're trying to move towards is measuring for outcomes. If the council is trying to invest in a higher level of service for, say, snow plowing, then we define what is that level of service. We respond, say, when the snow is at 6 inches or more, and then we actually measure our ability to achieve that goal. So what's the resources necessary to do that? The complexity comes when looking at equipment. I think obviously the manpower and the materials to respond in a snowstorm is one level, but then the equipment itself. So there's another layer that actually goes back, and we actually are looking, as Tiffany's pointing out, making sure that our purchasing practices, that we are getting the best price possible for the equipment that we need, not necessarily the best piece of equipment, but the equipment that we need. And so that is the central focus of a fleet manager, is making sure that we understand the need, not the best piece possible. And that is a constant challenge for any fleet manager in any city. I can assure you, based on over 30 years of experience on that topic alone, that you have to stay disciplined with this. You have to make sure you identify the need. It's very important.
Can those criteria be shared with council? I'd be very interested to see what's guiding some of that, not by way of critique, but just by way of understanding our budgeting process as three-dimensionally as I possibly can as we're getting geared up to talk about the budget.
Yeah, I think, sure. The short answer is yes. I think there's lots of things that we can share. I think there's lots of things, too, that we're still trying to improve upon as we move down this model here. So, again, we're in the third year, and we've made pretty good improvement. But now we're identifying these opportunities here for which we need to refine our approach. But, yes, we have as Stacy and Tiffany have alluded to, we have a lot of information we can share with council.
Yeah, and I definitely want to acknowledge that progress. It's pretty amazing that
really
staff's gotten this far, and it's definitely an asset to the city. So good work.
All right. Anything else? Anything else, Scott?
No, thanks.
No. All right. Council Member Elrod.
So I want to understand better the discussion on the budget process of what's going to be happening. It states that the summary will be providing a summary of reductions by department, service level, budget. That again to me starts sounding like we're reverting to departmental budgets. What I hope and what I look forward to is that when we go through the budget process, we are making decisions on programs. And programs is essentially agnostic of the department. The departments and where the money falls is a math exercise at the end. But what I'm hoping that we will have a discussion on is the programs, the service level, the the alignment to our comprehensive plan, so that we're not getting stuck on, this department went up 10, this department went down 5, etc. So I'm very sensitive to that comment here because I want to make it explicitly clear that I'd like us to be discussing the program and making decisions on the program, not on a departmental budget.
Yeah, so I can answer that. So, so we're in the process of implementation, right? And so we're going from that sort of incremental line item focused, everybody's in their departmental silo, and we're moving in that direction with the implementation of PBB. So at the moment, for the most part, our programs are still owned by a department. We have taken steps this year to integrate more departments or across departments, I guess, programs into the system. But it is a little bit of a process moving away from, what we used to do to what we hope to achieve. So I definitely think that although we will be calling out the department because they are the owner, especially right now, and probably there's an extent to which some of that's still going to continue to exist. But I still think that we're definitely going to be having the conversations more around the programs and the service level changes and much less focus on the departments. Does that answer your concern or question?
So I do recognize and appreciate you're going to have a lead, right? So each program has a lead that just says, obviously, so let's use snow removal. Obviously, that's going to come from Public Works, but when we think about snow removal, there is a lot of other components to it that are contributing to it that's not just in the Public Works department.
Yeah.
So again, my point is I really don't want to see a budget that says, here's key budget. I want to see, here's our budget for snow removal and historic preservation. And, I think there are hundreds of programs. I'm not saying we have to look at hundreds of programs, but I think we have to look at more than 3. And again, it's not about picking the top or, the top 3. In some ways, those are the ones that are easy decisions to be. It's really looking at what's in that bottom quartile that we really have to understand and make some decisions on. So I just can't stress enough how important it is for all of us to begin to change our mindset, that we have to force a very uncomfortable and maybe imperfect process to a certain degree. That's it.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I said I'm up next, and then Patrick, you lowered your hand, and then we have Council Member Grove. But a couple questions. How many line items do we have again? It's something. Was it 400 or 800? I can't remember. It was a lot. Tiffany?
Oh my gosh. I consolidated some. Yeah, so I don't know that off the top.
You consolidated hundreds.
Yeah, I think we went from, probably over 800 to, for some reason, 600 is sticking in my head, but it's probably
512.
512. There you go. Erlene's got it.
All right.
So we currently have 512 programs in the PBB system.
Great, thank you. And my other second question then is, where does deferred maintenance work in here? I mean, budget after budget, we have deferred maintenance, and that's gone on for way too long. So where does that fit in here?
Yeah, so that's really going to be addressed with our capital fund. A lot of our building maintenance and repairs and infrastructure improvements are from our capital projects fund, which is kind of separate from PBB. So that's really going to be a discussion that we'll have with council on the capital projects fund.
All righty. Thank you. Councilmember Grove.
I appreciate the strides that have been made and how difficult this is. Kind of a twist on what Karina and Scott were talking about. If we have to, in this COVID world, reduce service levels or reduce programs, how do we evaluate who it serves, how much it costs, and the benefit based on different groups, seniors versus immigrants versus teens versus the general population? How do we score it? Or I mean, this quadrant thing makes sort of sense, but how do we, if we have to make hard decisions, how do we balance one against the other? Because as elected officials, of course, people are very passionate about their demographic or their group that we're serving, and it's hard for us to evaluate the overall benefit. So how do you help us do that?
So we have some, so program attributes helps with some of that, okay? So one of the program attributes is demand, so that would be an increase in demand. The population served. Now, unfortunately, that doesn't, tell you what the demographic is. That would have to be, I guess, probably at this point more of the narrative piece of the program description, but it does tell you the amount of program or population served. We also have a reliance attribute, and that indicates the extent to which the city is either the only provider on one end of the spectrum, or there's lots of other providers that could step in if we were to not any longer be providing this service. And that's probably a really helpful metric in that. But as far as specific populations, again, that's going to have to be more of a narrative discussion.
Good. All right. Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, I had a related question. Is all of the effort that we're currently making to measure outcomes qualitative? Is any of it quantitative? Or excuse me, the other way around. Is it all quantitative? Is any of it qualitative? It seems like if we're just measuring outcomes in terms of sort of budget processes and finances and dollars and cents, we're potentially missing a huge aspect of what actually defines success, which is sort of, humans and citizens in Littleton having better lives going forward. And then the second question I had is, the budget that council gets is still, I think, is a line item budget. Are we going to eventually get a sort of priority-based budget that we can have in a binder and be sort of flipping through? Where is that? Is that going to be a document that's going to exist? I mean, I'd like to see all 500 programs somewhere, and I'd like to see how we're measuring outcomes in all just one place that I can sort of highlight and grab a hold of and bend the pages on and so on.
So to address your first question, the community results are all reflect the Envision Littleton comprehensive plan, and the values that are contained within it. So I know that the descriptions are a little vague, but for example, under quality community, and I have in front of me the specific results definitions that are provided to departments when they're scoring their program. a quantity and diversity of housing options that makes living in Littleton attainable for a wide range of age groups and income levels. Neighborhoods that maintain their character or are carefully managed when headed towards transition. Under natural community, a vibrant city for both residents and visitors, enlivened by an active downtown, an array of arts, cultural, and entertainment options, both indoor and outdoor, extensive heritage, tourism opportunities, and popular community events and festivals throughout the year. So, PBB, it is a lot of a finance tool. So there's a lot of quantitative parts to it. And, we in budget, I love all the numbers and the analytics and stuff, but we try to capture, the community side of it with all of the values and more of that qualitative information that you can use to evaluate those things.
Yeah, and I don't want to get into the weeds here, but this does strike me as kind of a critical point, right? If the whole idea is eventually to be able to measure outcomes so that we can head in the direction of quality community and world-class government, I don't think that mere qualitative measurements are always going to be sufficient information for us to make that decision. I think there's also going to have to be qualitative measurements of some kind. So we can really see in three dimensions kind of the human impact of what we're doing, and that's not going to be true of every program. I mean, I think with snow removal, you can definitely assess that quantitatively in terms of how long it took us to respond and how many road miles got plowed and how much the gas cost and how much we were able to control overtime and so on. But when you're talking about like affordable housing, you're going to have to talk about academic outcomes, and you're going to have to talk about proximity to transportation. You're going to have to talk about how long people stay in that housing, the safety of that home environment in terms of just the built structure of the home and so on. Is there any sort of talk in the PBB world about this kind of qualitative measurements to be able to really measure outcomes?
Mark, I believe you want to chime in, and then I know Councilmember Fay has a question too. But.
Yeah, I think, well, first of all, remember that this is an estimating tool. And so we will always be required to have a line item budget that we must submit to the state. And so that will never go away. And so this is a tool that overlays on that. One day you may have a budget book that is translated into something you can carry. Right now, that is more of a software program for which we can provide outcomes and information to share with council. So remember, this is our third year and nobody has taken it as far as we have. The other piece I would add is that this system will never be perfect. There will always be conversations that are unique to every city on how you want to measure outcomes or measure success. So point taken by Mayor Pro Tem. I think it'll be a journey, a conversation where we are measuring both qualitative and quantitative on pieces of information that the council feels is critical and will change over time. I have spent my entire career of over 30 years chasing this issue alone. And I can tell you that it has evolved considerably in my career on how cities have been able to measure this outcome. And this, in my opinion, is the best system I have seen to help us try to get a handle on exactly these kinds of issues. And so I think we'll just have to be just acknowledge and realize that this is a journey for which we will have to polish the system over time and adjust. There are multiple cities in just our metro area who have learned some interesting lessons. And I think Boulder has been working this 7-8 years. And so they have certainly learned a lot. And then certainly my conversations with them, they recognize that they've made improvements every single year to their methodology. And that will be our journey.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Fay, you lowered your hand. Did you still want to talk?
Yes, the city manager said what I wanted to say. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Driscoll.
Yeah, I just think it's important to realize what staff is doing tonight. They're presenting sort of just an update as to where we are with priority-based budgeting. For those newer council members, they did a very good presentation when this was first rolling out. I'm sure since then we've probably had presentations as to the power of this tool. And what I would offer, mainly because I'm tired, is on September 8th, I think, is when they said the next meeting will be held, is to give us a demonstration of the analytics of what we can get out of this system and extend this conversation further. Because we're not going to settle or do anything tonight with it. I think this is more information, if I'm not correct.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much. We don't have any other hands up. I'll just chime in here. As someone who has done many multi-million-dollar budgets over the years, I think this priority-based budget, I wish I would have had that, 20 years, 30 years ago. While it was sort of priority-based budgeting, this is it's become a science, and I really like it. It may not address all the issues that Mayor Pro Tem had brought up, but I think it's definitely in the right direction. Council, do we have any other questions? I don't see anybody's hand up. If not, are you looking for any direction at this point from us?
No, Mayor. This was just informational. I was hoping that you would get a little bit of a glimpse about how we're going to apply the tool. And I can tell there's a lot of excitement and high expectations. And but honestly, we're excited to try to deliver this thing. It is in a system here that is unique in my career. And I think our timing is good. We're obviously have a pretty significant challenge financially. And to have it in place at this moment in time, I think the council is going to find this a great benefit.
Great. Thank you very much. If there are no other questions, let's go into our last item on the agenda. It's the administrative updates. We'll start with the city manager.
Actually, Mayor, I do not have any additional updates here for this evening.
Say no more. City attorney.
Nothing from the city attorney.
Great. Thank you very much. Council, don't forget to hit your mailbox because that's where you do have the CAFR and some surveys in there that you'll want to look at. If we have nothing else, it is 9:12 and we are adjourned. See you Tuesday.
Thank you.